Hi, this is IELTS7.guru and I'm Ben Adams. And today I'm going to talk to you about Task 1 writing. Yes, we're going to talk to you about graphs and tables and all sorts of fun things like that. Now recently I've had lots of questions about Task 1, the academic writing. So for the next 4 weeks we're going to focus on this only. That's right, so every week, for the next 4 weeks at least, I promise, we will do a mini lesson just for you and just to help you guys get started. Right, so today we're going to start by just some basic skills that you need to master if you want to do well in the Task 1 academic writing. If you want to do well in Task 1 writing. Now what we could look at, there's so much to do with Task 1 writing, we could look at lots of kinds of language, kinds of grammar and sentence patterns and organizing and all sorts of things like that, but we're not. Today we're just going to look at task achievement, and we're only going to look at 2 aspects of task achievement. We're going to get you to have a look at some different graphs and make sure you know exactly what the graph is doing, what's actually happening in the graph. That's number 1. And number 2, we're going to write some overviews, and just to make sure you've got a good understanding of what an overview is and some basic ways you can do it, and not worry too much about the language today. Very much based on skills. So before we start, we need to take a look at the band descriptors for a level 7 in task achievement. And so what do I mean by that? Well, there are lots of things we could talk about task achievement, but the band descriptors really talk about only 2 things at this point. So here are the band descriptors for Task 1 academic writing, task achievement, band 7. That presents a clear overview of the stages, main trends and differences. We're not going to talk about stages today because that's really about processes and things, but main stages and differences are key. The other thing is that you clearly highlight and demonstrate what the key features are of the graph. And we'll look at that a little bit, but not very much today. But you can't do any of this if you don't fully understand what the graph is actually doing. So we're going to do an example. We're going to look at an example of a graph together, and we're going to decide what's happening in the graph. Now the graph could be comparing 2 times, it could be comparing change over time, or it could be comparing groups or people or things, or some kind of combination of the 3 items. Okay, let's jump straight in and let's look at the first example together. Okay, let's look at our first example. So here we have a bar chart, and the first thing we need to ask is what is being compared or what is changing. And we can see we have 4 years, so we can see something is changing, and we know it is changing over time. It isn't just, we're not comparing 2 times, we're not comparing 2004 and 2007, we're comparing the change over this time. That's one thing. Now the other thing we notice is that it's comparing 5 countries. So it's comparing 5 things and it's comparing change over time, over 4 years. But what is actually changing? What is actually being compared? Well, one good thing to do is to look at this number. You can see the number 40. What does this mean? What does 40 red bar actually mean? Well, in this case, we know it means several things. We know it means Australia, 2004, and 40. That's exactly what we know it means. So the good thing to do with this is to make a sentence with all this information to check that you really understand what is happening, what is being compared, or what is changing. So here's our simple sentence. We could say 40, now remember it says thousands here, so 40,000, no S by the way, 40,000 British people, it says British, immigrated to Australia in 2004. So we've got all the information in here. The next step is to try to think, well, what kind of introduction could we write with this? So we could end up with something like this. The bar chart compares, remember we're looking at differences, so compare is a good word. The bar chart compares the number of British people in thousands that moved to 5 countries to live, so moved somewhere to live from 2004 to 2007. So we have here the change over time. We're saying it is a bar chart, it's comparing. This part here is present tense, but this part here is past tense because it is past. And then we've got some other examples that you can take a look at, have a go yourself. You can stop the video, pause the video, write your answer down, then play the video and see what my suggested answer is and see how you go. So it's kind of like a mini lesson for you. Okay, here's the first one. Look at that. Okay, well, I'm going to give you the answer now. You can stop if you want to keep writing, or you can just listen to my answer. So, again, what is happening in this one? Well, this one is comparing groups in different places. It's comparing which groups? It's comparing male and female groups. So men and women, it also says up here by gender, it's the same thing. Now, as for the introduction, it is a bar chart, and the key thing here is this number again. And this number is percent, it's a rate. So in this case, it's percent. This is sort of what you'd write for an introduction. The bar chart compares the percentage, or you could say rate if you like, of men and women who can read and write in 6 regions. Okay, so that's one answer. Let's look at another one for you guys. Here we go. Look at that. What do you think is happening? What's being compared? What is changing? Any of those things? And try to think of an introduction you could write. What would you write? Okay, let me show you my answer. So stop it now if you need to, or continue. Okay, so the answer is, it's comparing 3 different places, Malaysia, USA, and UK, and it's comparing some things in these 3 places. Now, there are many ways you could write an introduction for this. I've written a couple of ways. Now remember, there is more than one pie chart here, so we've got the pie charts. And that means there's no S here. The pie charts compare how trash is dealt with in 3 countries. Or we could write the pie charts compare the percentage of trash that is put in landfill, recycled, or disposed in 3 countries. If you want to write the 3 countries, that's okay, but you don't really need to. No time is mentioned, so you don't need to write time either. Okay, let's look at another one for you. Here's an exciting one. Look at that. Look at that for a bit, and then I'll give you my suggested answer. Okay, I'll give you the answer now. Stop it if you want. Okay, so here's my answer. Here's one answer. It compares different age groups and different things. So it compares 3 age groups, and down here are all the different things that's comparing as well. So it's a table. And an introduction might be this. The table compares the percentage of people employed in different sectors for 3 age groups. Now it says here sector. It's okay if you repeat some of the words, don't worry too much. Now if you like, we could write it in a different way. I've got here some other options. Could write it something like this. The table compares how many people work in different kinds of areas for 3 age groups. This is not quite as good because many is not the same as percentage, and these are clearly percentages. So you may not be the best option. This might be better. How popular? That's similar to saying how many or what percentage, and it's a little bit shorter as well. No, there's no one way. Always remember that. But simple is good. Okay, let's look at one last one. Now this one is a little hard to see. Okay, so look at this one. What is happening, what is being compared, and then we'll look at my suggested answer for you. Okay, let me give you the answer. Stop it if you like. Okay, let's look at the answer now. So here we've got, it compares change over time and 5 countries. Now this is interesting. You've got the change, here we go, the change up here, that's 20 years, and then we have 5 countries as well. Now they're both connected, and people often have trouble with this kind of thing, and the key thing to notice here is the date. Here it says 1999, and this is 1999. It's usually the case that you get the extra information about 1 year or one part of the other graph. It's a bit like a breakdown or an extra look at this one time. So with this in mind, we can make an introduction that makes a little more sense. So let's have a look. We could say something like this. The line chart shows, remember we've got one the, so it's S. The line chart shows how visits to and from the UK changed from this time to this time. And then this one shows something different. While the bar chart gives a breakdown of where UK visitors went in. Okay. While the bar chart gives a breakdown of where UK visitors went in 1999. It gives a breakdown. It gives more information. We can change that if you like. We could say it gives. So we could change it to say that. The line chart shows how visits to and from the UK changed, while the bar chart gives more information about where UK visitors went. So the introduction shows how the bar chart links to the line chart. Alright, so you've looked at 4 charts, and these 4 charts give you a pretty good idea of the typical kinds of graphs and tables and line charts and things that you would see in an IELTS exam. Of course, you may see other combinations of graphs as well, maybe a pie chart with a bar chart or something, but we're not really worried about that today. Today, we're just looking at basic skills to help you get started. All right, let's take a moment and look at overviews, because overviews are pretty important, and if you don't have an overview, you usually can't get a 7. So let's have a look at that. Okay, now we talked about overviews, so here is a list of 4 things that people often say about overviews, or at least mistakenly believe that the overview and the conclusion are different. The overview must go immediately after the introduction, or the overviews should include detailed information, or you must have an overview that is in a different paragraph than from the rest of your answer. And think about these for a minute, and I'll tell you what the answer is. Are these true or false? Are they all true? Are they all false? Are some true? Are some false? What do you think? Okay, I'll give you the answer, and the answer is they are all false. The overview and the conclusion are not different. They are the same, except that a conclusion has to go at the end of a report of some kind. The overview, the information in the overview and the conclusion are the same. They are both summarizing what's going on. So, although they can go in different places, they're the same information. Don't do both. If you're going to have a conclusion, just write a conclusion. If you're going to have an overview somewhere, don't worry about a conclusion. You don't need it. If you do it, you're going to repeat yourself. Now, the other one here that people believe is that a lot of people teach the overview. You write the overview after the introduction. This is okay, but you don't have to do that. The overview can go anywhere that you feel makes sense, anywhere that's logical given what you're doing. It may make sense to finish with an overview. It may make sense to start or have an overview near the start. The other thing is, this is also a common problem. Overviews do not include detailed information, but a lot of students have trouble understanding what is detailed and what is not detailed, and they find it hard to separate them. But we'll give you hopefully we'll give you a bit of an idea about solving this problem today. And the last one here is you must have an overview that is in a different paragraph. This is not true. Now, usually we teach this. Like I said, you could have a conclusion in a different paragraph and an overview near the beginning. But actually, the overview can be inside the paragraphs you already write. If you write in a certain way, maybe every paragraph has an overview. If you write with clear topic sentences, chances are you've already got an overview. So don't worry too much. We will put an overview at the end, usually, just because it fits with the way that I like to organize answers, but it doesn't matter very much. Okay, let's have a look at some overviews to get you guys started. Okay, look at this one. Now, I've just got part of this graph. I haven't got all of it for you, just to make it a bit easier. There are a number of things that you should notice about this graph. Okay, so we could say all these things. That both lines increased over the period. So number of visitors to and number of visitors from both went up. But this one here, this is the black line, went up much faster. In fact, see, it was about twice as high at the end. So there's quite a big change. Now, we could mention that And we also could say is that although both groups of visitors increased steadily, there was quite a change around this time. At this time here, suddenly they started growing much faster. So all these things could go in the overview, quite possible. And if we put them all together, we'd end up with something like this. Both the number of visitors to and from the UK increased over the period, but the latter, so this is the latter here, but the latter increased much faster and was around twice as large as the former by the end. Also, so it's okay to contrast with but and while, and it's also quite easy to add an idea with also. So these are really useful things to use if you're not sure how to connect your ideas. It doesn't have to be difficult. Also, they suddenly began to increase much faster after 1986. So this is a pretty comprehensive overview. A good way to test this is to try to draw this idea. And if you kind of draw, this one went up faster, and they both went up faster after 1986, sounds like you've got a pretty good idea of what happened. Good overview. So a final tip here is that it's usually for a clear overview, you need 2 or 3 ideas to get a really good overview, because otherwise you're not summarizing everything you see. Let's try one more example together. Let's look at this wonderful bar chart again. So what ideas do we notice here? Well, this looks a bit tricky. Remember, it's comparing a lot of things, comparing men and women and these 6 regions. And what could we say? Well, we do notice that women were always more illiterate. But you notice some other things. We notice there's a connection between illiteracy and wealth. That's something we could mention. And finally, this is a bit trickier, you notice that the gap between them also changes. So in these countries here, the gap is quite small, and then suddenly the gap gets huge. The less developed a country is, the greater the amount of literacy. That's true from what we saw. We also can say the less developed a country is, the greater the gender gap. So we've got about 3 points we could bring into this overview. So we put it all together, we could do something like this. This is a bit difficult. Okay, so let's look at an overview here. I've got 2 overviews for you to look at. They're more or less the same. The first one's a little bit simpler, and the second one is a little bit more complicated, just to see what you could do. We could say that here, the first part is kind of the same, also to link the ideas, and we just added these 2 ideas here. So the less developed a country is, the greater the literacy gap, and the greater the gender gap. So that's not a bad overview. We could make it more complicated using while and using the old not only, also, or but also idea as well. But it's the same idea. Okay, so to summarize what we did today, to summarize task achievement, you can practice deciding what graphs are doing and what is changing or being compared, and this will make it easy to write an introduction, to write your overview. And about overviews, try to include 2 or 3 pieces of information. You should be able to draw a really simple graph based on your overview. Finally, remember, there's never one correct overview. Okay, that's it. So next time we're going to look at writing introductions and how to organize your essay, how to organize your task 1 answer. That's the focus next time. So more or less goodbye from me, but remember, subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't, and also go to IELTS7.guru, look at some stuff, sign up for the monthly newsletter. Lots of good stuff there. If you want, just click on the link down here. It's much faster. Go straight there and you can join our IELTS 7 community and get some good stuff, bonus material, examples of essay writing every single week in your email. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching.